Did any of the following actually happen as described in these scary stories? I saw Dogman chase a moose. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I recently read a comment on your channel from someone asking you to do a story about Dogman battling a moose. I know you're not going to believe me, but I'm pretty sure I saw exactly that one time last year. I know you probably think I'm the guy that made the request in the chat and that I'm just trolling you with this story, but I'll tell it to you anyhow and see what you think about it. I was camping in the Gwynn State Forest in northern Michigan. It's located in that northernmost part of the state, the land that's actually attached to Wisconsin, but for some reason is called Michigan. It's smack dab between Lake Superior and Lake Michigan, and I have camped there for almost 20 years now. Back when that TV show about Bigfoot was popular, I used to say that this forest was very squatchy, but I never saw anything strange there until our happy lives and cultures ended worldwide, and we all went into lockdown. That year, I went camping alone a few times. This particular trip included, so I have nobody else to back me up when I make these claims I'm about to lay out for you. I was camping near the Escanaba River, I remember. Not directly by it. I prefer to set up in a more private and hidden location when I'm out in the wilderness alone. The river was close enough that I could hear it all night, though. I had to exit my tent to relieve myself in the woods in the middle of the night, and I remember walking away from the tent looking for a good spot to take care of my needs. Unlike the vast majority of my life, in which I can't get a moment's peace or quiet ever, I noticed how perfectly easy it was to think and concentrate, or conversely, empty my mind of all thought, when there was nobody else there to be unintentionally distracting. It was quiet. Other than the sound of the river, it was silent. I felt so good, appreciating the relaxing quiet. As I did my private business, I felt wrapped and comforted by the silence. And then I remembered, I was in the forest. I should be hearing crickets. I should be hearing owls or frogs or something. And then, as if to answer the question in my head, I did hear something. Something large, very far off, to my right. I could feel it in my feet, too. Something big and heavy was crashing through the trees and headed in my direction at a superhuman rate of speed. I needed to get out of there pronto. Grogginess and a growing sense of panic caused me to become turned around almost immediately. Not only was I uncertain which way my tent was, I was uncertain which way I should move in order to avoid the elephant-sounding thing running toward me. I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a Bigfoot. I had sort of always wanted to see one of those, but now that it might have been actually becoming a reality, I found myself wishing I could be any place but there. Running like a chicken with its head cut off, I accidentally made it to the small clearing where my tent was. I had about a 30-foot run to get back into the tent. I never did make it back inside, but as it turned out, that was probably a lucky thing. Behind me, the sounds of trees and vegetation snapping and crashing grew so loud, I knew that whatever was behind me was directly behind me, as in a few feet and no more. Turning around, expecting to see a Sasquatch in real life, my eyes were met by the weirdest looking thing I'd ever seen. It only took a second for the huge creature to move one step closer, and then I understood. I wasn't looking up at the face of a Bigfoot. I was looking up at the bulbous snout of a very large moose. Feeling a sense of relief for a split second, I didn't even have time to smile, for the rest of the moose emerged from the brush, and I saw that the thing had craziness in its eyes and panic in its expression and behavior. I was about to be trampled by the immense beast. Diving headlong into a bush behind a tree, I got scuffed up a bit as I landed, and the wind got knocked out of me. As I gasped to fill my lungs up with oxygen again, the moose slammed its shoulder into the side of the tree hard but ricocheted and kept on running past, as hard as it seemed to be able to run. Where was it going to? That's what I wondered as I held onto the tree for support and peered after the manic giant. Zoom, running past me from my right to my left, crashed another large, hairy creature, every bit as big and heavy sounding as the moose itself. Only this animal was not running on hooves. It was running on its hind legs. Not too dissimilar to the way human beings run. It wasn't a human being, though. Not as far as I could tell. I mean, it was dark, but I swear this thing had a dog head. I know bears have snouts too, like dogs, and I know a thin bear can resemble a dog, but this thing wasn't thin. It was muscular and massive, and it ran way too fast to have been a bear on its back legs. That having been said, I have to grant to the skeptics the fact that I was watching all this in the moonlight, in the woods, at night. So, that Dogman was the reason that the moose had been freaking out. I thought I was going to see it grab the moose from behind, but the four-legged mammoth put all its weight on its front legs and reared its giant rear legs up in the air, preparing to unleash a mighty two-hoofed kick to the Dogman's chest. Well, the kick went off as planned, but the Dogman slid backwards in a somewhat ungraceful fashion. He avoided getting kicked, but he landed on his butt, and the moose trotted and galloped over to the woodline. I didn't even know a moose could do that kind of a kick. Then it did this other thing, where it sort of bounced off this big tree and walked up the side, ending up in a standing position, like a mentally insane real-life bullwinkle. The Dogman, back on his hind feet, charged toward the moose as if aiming to tackle it around the midsection. It couldn't get close to the huge antlered animal, though, as the moose began swinging its hooves wildly in the air anytime the Dogman drew near. It looked like an off-balance drunken boxer taking a swing or two, then catching its balance against the tree trunk. The Dogman attempted a few more charges, but the moose was finding more success with his mode of attack. Finally, the moose advanced, and the Dogman retreated. I had been watching all of this like it was on YouTube or something. I wasn't really grasping that I was still in fact a part of this story. That changed quickly when the moose let out a weird cry and began charging ahead. This time he was chasing the Dogman. Both giant mammals ran straight for the tree I was hiding behind, and once again I had to race madly in a direction that I hoped would remove me from the situation most quickly. Lying on the ground with my face in the dirt, my body literally bounced up and down as the monsters ran past me. It was a little too close for comfort that time, but I could hear them continuing to retreat for a long time, and that was all I cared about. By this point, I was more than completely awake again, and it was easy to find my way back to camp, or what was left of it. My tent had gotten trampled at some point in the Battle of the Gargantuas. I don't even know when that happened. I started a fire and began going through the wreckage, sorting out what was unbroken or at least fixable. I packed what I could and waited for the first bit of dawn to leak into the night sky before beginning my trek out of the wilderness and back into the tedium of unending lockdown. As exciting as my night was, that's also how terrifying, not to mention exhausting it was too. Oh, and add in expensive, since we're using our adjectives. I won't say I haven't gone online to price new camping equipment since, but I will say that I have not yet gotten any. I think I'm just too chicken to go back out into the wilderness now that I can look you in the eye and tell you. I saw Dogman chasing a moose. Hey, it's me, Henrey Lee Dogman, standing alone on a scary road in the middle of the night. I'm waiting for Gigi, our newest horror hostess. She said she'd meet me here. wherever here is. But while we're waiting for her, I'd like to thank this episode's executive producer, Kathy Barrickman. She's real smart. That's what Kath is, just like The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath is. She's the executive producer with a plan, none other than Kathy Barrickman. Please join us in thanking $10 channel member Kathy Barrickman for making this episode possible. In appreciation, we let Kathy see our shows a day in advance of the public, whenever possible. Plus, she gets to see all our secret, uncensored, scary Dogman stories that we put out each Sunday night. And if that weren't enough, Kathy gets to enjoy our archive of over 15 hours of scary, uncensored Dogman stories far too wild to ever run on this channel. And now, I'd like to cut to a story that we hope Kathy might like. We can't do that until our new hostess is here, though. Oh, wait. Something weird is happening, isn't it? There she is. Ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else might be watching, may I present our newest horror hostess, the ghost that haunts this lonely stretch of road. You know her, you love her. Gigi the Ghost Girl. Gigi?
You won't believe me, but I'm dating a werewolf. Dear Scary Stories, NYC. I've got a weird story to tell you. Actually, it's a bunch of stories, but I'll condense them all into one. I'll try to keep it short, but not leave out any important details. I'm going to call the boy Jim, but that's not his real name. For reasons which may soon become obvious, I'm going to try to keep this anonymous for as long as I can. I guess the beginning of it all for me was waking up one night, looking out my bedroom window, and seeing what I at first thought was a very large dog looking in at me. I screamed and sat up in bed, feeling unnaturally afraid. After all, why would a big old doggy make me scream like a horror movie scream queen? I blinked and the dog pulled back from the window, which it had been leaning on the sides of it with its front legs. As the big dog pulled back, though, it didn't fall on all fours as I expected to see. Instead, the creature pulled all the way back to a fully upright position, similar to how you or I would stand up. I remember gasping so hard, I choked and coughed for a while, watching the rest of the scene through watery eyes. The front dog legs I referred to earlier looked a whole lot more like what you would call arms to me just then. The chest was too broad to be a dog's chest. This canine had shoulders, muscular ones at that. When it was at full height, it stood tall enough that I could no longer see its head from my point of view. The top of the window cut it off from my perspective. In an instant, this absurdly huge creature ran away on its hind legs in a sprinting style. I mean it. I've seen people sprint before, and that's what this guy did. I've never seen a dog do that before, though, so how could that have been a dog? I sat there for more than a while, very stunned. Not just by the monster sighting, but also because I hadn't awakened anyone in the house. I sleep downstairs with my parents upstairs, in an effort to get some privacy, but usually that's a no-go. They once ran down here because I shouted when I stubbed my toe at 3 a.m. This time, however, when I could have actually used a second set of eyes to tell me what I had really seen, what I thought I saw, they both slept soundly through the night. The possibility that I may have experienced some kind of waking dream did cross my mind. I didn't tell anyone except my best friend Margaret, not her real name, about what happened, because I wasn't sure myself what really occurred. At first, I was certain it was a dog, and then it looked like a big, giant, hairy man. I wanted to see the head again once I'd seen the torso. I mean, maybe I really hadn't seen a dog head after all. I hadn't seen the body and the head at the same time. Maybe it was a Bigfoot? It was too large to have been a cosplayer in a costume. I wasn't sure what it was, so I wasn't sure how I should feel. Well, like I said, I only told Margaret, but she spread it around faster than light. By the afternoon, I got texts, messages, emails, and tweets asking me if I saw a Dogman. That was really my education on Dogman. I was vaguely aware of the Dogman, but I had not paid attention. It was something my father was watching on the cable one time. Suddenly, overnight, I became a Dogman addict, looking up, listening to, and watching whatever I could about the subject. Some of my female friends did as well, and we put each other on a speed dial, as my parents like to say. We all live around the same area and decided to look out for each other. Nobody really knows how dangerous a Dogman can be to humans walking alone, especially to people who are short like me and my friends. Well, except for big 6-foot-tall Rhonda, but trust me, Rhonda could not defeat a Dogman in a fight either. And then one night, about 3 weeks after the first time, I woke up to see that dog head staring in through the window at me again. I sat up and shined the flashlight I had been keeping by my bed in his face, and he reared back, displaying those massive pecs again, fully lit up this time. I grabbed my phone to take a picture, and he ran off as quickly as before. I was unable to get a photo of it, but I have massive new data to share with my friends. So none of our parents believed us at all. Frustrated, we went to the police, who couldn't keep a straight face or stop making rude comments. And we left while they were still taking our statement. We have a local newspaper in our town, but when we went to their office, we were treated very rudely by the nasty old lady who runs the place. Journalism truly is dead. We decided we would need to get some proof to make the old people see that we weren't joking. Preferably a clear photo or video. I asked my dad to get a motion-activated camera and put it outside my window, and when he said no, I spent my own money to get one. I attached it to the tree in the yard and pointed it towards my window. If something moved near there, it should take the video. Even if I just open or shut my drapes. At least in theory. One of the side effects of all this is that none of us girls wanted to go out at night any longer. When we absolutely had to, we arranged to go to places together, but generally we just stayed home, feeling it was too unsafe to be out there in the dark. My mother sent me into town to get some groceries one late afternoon, and I was rushing back home as the sky grew dark. There's this boy staring at me. It made me kind of nervous. I mean, he was staring at me, and I didn't have any idea who he was. I thought he was good looking, but in that context, he was frightening. I wondered if he was going to rob me or worse. When he started walking in my direction, I sped up my pace. He had to jog to catch up to me and began trying to chat me up in jovial fashion. I ignored him, not even wanting to look at him. He kept trying to crack jokes and get me to smile, but I wasn't having any of it. Finally, he told me about a secret club he knew, where bands played illegally and nobody wore a mask on their face. That stopped me in my tracks, and I finally turned and looked at the guy. He had a handsome face with dark black hair that had a reddish tinge to it. I wondered if it were natural or from a bottle. He smelled good too. Letting down my guard, I told him that it wasn't safe for me to go out at night. He swore to me that he'd never let me out of his sight, taking a moment to eye me all over and accentuate his point. Normally, I would have been offended, but this guy seemed too innocent in the way he did everything to be truly offensive. We exchanged emails, me and Jim, which made him laugh. I wasn't ready to get phone calls from him, and I wasn't ready to friend him on social media either, so emails it was. In the first letter he wrote me, he told me that writing emails made him feel as old as his dad. And he asked me if we can chat on some messenger thing. I forgot which one. After a while, he calmed down a bit and began writing me the nicest and most old-fashioned letters. I guess you could almost call them love letters, although he wisely kept them very innocent. I was starting to like him in spite of myself, and if it hadn't been for COVID and the Dogman, I probably would have already started dating him. As it was, I still hadn't even friended him anywhere online, and I still hadn't told him my last name. So, a couple or 3 weeks after the first time I met Jim, my mother sent me to get groceries again. I stayed in the store a bit long, waiting until it was the time of day it had been when I met Jim. I was really hoping we could run into each other again that night, and that he would think it was merely by chance. When walking home, though, I didn't see him anywhere around. I walked slowly, too, looking in all directions for the entire trip. There's a park 2.5 blocks from my house, and I did a double take when I saw Jim there, standing leaning against a tree. He wasn't facing towards me, so I waved my arms and called his name. Then I began walking towards him, feeling happier to see him than I expected to be. My heart was beating a little harder than it should have been. I tried to breathe deeply because I didn't want Jim to know that I was beginning to like him. He still hadn't responded to any of my calls or hand-waving, and I was still trotting towards him when something happened to make me stop short in my tracks. Jim began twitching and jerking around in the strangest manner. It's hard to even describe. At first I thought he was dancing, but if he was, then he was as bad as a dancer as a Lane character from old Seinfeld show that my mother still watches on reruns. The edge of the woods in our local park seemed like a strange place to bust a move. I was stunned and confused, and just stood there silently watching. No, he wasn't dancing. He was in pain, or he was suffering from some kind of attack. Should I call for an ambulance? I had left my phone at home, so I looked around for the payphone or someone else to call 911 for me. Then I saw something that entirely changed the story all around, as well as myself. The boy began sprouting hair all over his body, his nose and mouth elongated into a snout like you would see on a dog. His screams of pain were so loud, I winced in sympathy as he changed and grew. His clothes becoming too small for him, ripped and tore away from his now fur-covered body. Before he was even fully transformed, he was on all fours like a dog, limping into the woods out of my view. Jim was a werewolf, and Jim was who I had seen outside my window. That night, I awoke at 3 a.m. to see him outside my bedroom window again. I didn't shine my flashlight at him. I didn't try to snap a photo with my phone. Instead, I opened the window and climbed outside. I could tell you a lot more, but you probably don't want to hear it, do you? And that's because you won't believe me, but I'm dating a werewolf.
Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it. You can become a channel member by clicking the join link below. Then you can check our community page to find the links to 10 hours or more of secret, uncensored Dogman stories too wild to be told on this channel. Your other option is to join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. That's Peter's homemade club, where he will personally email you the links as well as occasional secret club messages. You may also be included as an executive producer in a future episode. Do you have a scary experience you want to tell us about? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or else call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LESS-SCARY. The machine cuts off every few minutes, so if you have a long story, please keep calling back and we'll piece it together later on. Good night and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.